Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Josh. I'm the lead pastor here at Gawler Uniting Church, and I wanted to take a few minutes to talk with you about the strategies that we're going to be putting in place around beginning to gather as a whole community in worship once more. This COVID-19 has been a real challenge to us in terms of exploring worship as a gathered community, and I think it points to a reality that worship is vital to us as a community of faith. But whilst it's looked different, I think this season has been a really wonderful season of innovation where we've been able to use technology and be creative about what it looks like to worship together. But it certainly has been a stretch for many of us. I know many of you have engaged online for the first time by having to jump into our worship services. But most of our church communities have been able to engage through the church online, but we've also made some DVDs available for those that couldn't be online, and that's been a great success as well. Because the way the season is not all the way it's always going to be. But we also know that in the midst of uncertainty, it's not always clear what the future is going to look like. So what I want to do is I want to explain to you the plan that we are going to be putting in place about returning to gatherings of worship. And it involves what I'm calling 3 plays. If you're not familiar with the analogy, it's a sporting one in which the coach calls a specific play which enables the team to do and behave in certain ways to be able to achieve a specific goal depending on the situation of the game. And I think that language is going to be really helpful for us because it doesn't assume a linear progression of, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 or anything like that, or phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It's that we will have a play 1, a play 2 and a play 3. But each one of them can change depending on, or we can choose one of those depending on the situation we find ourselves in as a culture and as a society. And it also, they're not going to be directly linked to the state and federal restrictions that are going to be in place around the phases of rollout that they're doing. What I learned was that through the progressive shutdown from back in March, each time the rules changed, it took time and energy for us as a team to innovate how it was that we were going to make best use of the restrictions and to be able to do as much as possible. And so we've decided to be able to pour energy into these 3 plays, regardless of whether they make the best use of the freedoms we have available to us or not. And that's just what we thought is going to be the best stewardship of our time and energy. So the 3 plays are this. The first one is Church Online at Home. This is the one we've been doing for a couple of months now. It's church on the screen in the lounge room with just the family or the household that you are with at home. And I think this is the most restricted we're ever going to be as a church in terms of being able to engage with worship. And so that's the default. When things get the worst they can possibly get, that's what we go back to, and that's what we've been experiencing over these last few months. So that's play number 1. Play number 2 is church in life groups. If you're not familiar with life groups, they're gatherings of 6 to 10 people that have existed long before this COVID situation came about. And basically, they gather in homes and they gather for fellowship, to share in hospitality with one another, to open the scriptures and to pray with one another. And it's not just a Bible study, it's a way to engage with some other people around meaningful community. And so our second play is going to be around engaging with church through life groups. So many of you are already part of life groups, and so this will just be you being able to gather in someone's home to be able to watch church online together. And there'll be some questions that are made available for you to be able to talk about the message and that which you've heard. And so it's just another sort of way of engaging together. It's not quite full church, but it is certainly meaningful community. And so that's our second play. It's church in life groups. And to be honest, I think that we have the ability through life groups to live out all the values that we hold to as a church. Authentic community and relational evangelism, fervent prayer, radical generosity and welcoming hospitality. All of those things can be lived out through a life group. Now, of course, as a part of the second play of church in life groups, we do need to consider the spacing restrictions that our governments and leadership are imposing upon us. But if we've got the ability to gather in such a way, I really encourage us to do so. So that's our second play. And the third one is quite simply church as the gathered community. All of us together in one worship space. And that's, in some sense, it's returning to worship as we knew it in some ways. But there's a specific why behind that. There's nothing between play number 2 and play number 3. Because I think play number 3 acknowledges why we exist as a church. We exist to see our communities transformed with the good news of Jesus Christ. And if Sunday was just about us, if it was just about those that we already know are members of our church, and if that was all it was, then we should be able to reasonably plan to be able to gather as groups of 20 or groups of 25 or 50 or whatever that looks like based on the current level of restrictions. But the thing is, that's not what we're hoping that our worshipping life is about. We're hoping that there will be people, we're actually believing that there will be people that are looking for hope during this season, people that are looking to something more as a result of this crisis, and that we want to be available, we want to be there as the local church. And we can't do that if there's restrictions in place that say that we can only have like 20 or 30 or 40 people in the facility and they have to be 1.5 meters apart, and that if people were to come along that exceed that, they just can't be there. Can you imagine a family that's coming to church for the first time being told they can't come in, or if they do, they need to sit 1.5 meters apart and they can't really connect with people? That's not the expression of community and faith that I would want to bring to people at this time. To those that are exploring faith, to those that are desperately seeking community. And so that's why there's nothing in between life groups and our fullest expression of worship. And I know that's going to be awkward for some people and it's going to feel frustrating. But I think it captures the very essence of why it is that we want to be the church. And it's not just for our own benefit, but it's for those that we have not yet met. And so those are our 3 plays. Play number 1, church at home, church online at home, with your family. Play number 2 is church in life groups, with 6 to 10 people in a space that's appropriate to be able to gather, worship together and discuss some of the content. And then play number 3 is church as the full gathered community. So as the situations change in our culture, that's the language we're going to be talking about. And hopefully that offers you some clarity as to what this can look like for us as a whole church. And so this coming Sunday is the first Sunday we can experience play number 2, church in life groups. And so if you're a part of a life group and you haven't reached out to your life group leader yet, I encourage you to do that so you can figure out a way to worship together in a small gathered community. But if you don't have a life group, I invite you, if you're already part of our church, to find a couple of members, people that you know, people that you like, people that you would spend time with anyway, and to gather around a cup of tea and watch in someone's living room on Sunday morning or another time of the week that works better for you. And if you need help connecting with some people, if you want to be a part of a life group, then feel free to send us a message at the Gawler Uniting Facebook page, or you can fill out the contact form on our website and I'll get in touch with you and figure out a way to connect you into community. So I don't know when play number 3 is going to be possible, but for now, I want us to live our play number 2 the best way we can, which is to gather for worship in life groups. So that's all I got to tell you. And so look after yourselves, love one another, and we'll catch up with you soon. God bless.